As you are right now, you are worthy and you are good enough. Do you ever find yourself paralyzed by self-doubt and the feeling of just not being good enough? You're definitely not alone, and I'm right there with you. I'm sharing my tips and tricks today with you so we can overcome self-doubt and fear. The struggle with self-doubt really comes to three main topic of fears: the fear of failure, the fear of being seen, and the fear of just not being good enough. Let's break down all of these different fears. The fear of not being good enough stems mostly from childhood, that we grew up with limiting beliefs that we didn't choose but somebody else put onto us. We just inherited and believed at some point that we are not good enough. But I am here to tell you, as you are right now, you are worthy and you are good enough. You don't need to have a huge accomplishment. You don't need the certificate. You don't need the job title. You are good enough as is. Then the fear of failure is that we probably all experience at one point. We try something new and then we fail, and then we're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have started it in the first place. But that is actually a good step to take, because in order to succeed, we need to fail. Failing is part of the process, and if we were perfect at every single thing that we're trying to do, and if we were perfect in every scenario, we would be all the same and we would be so boring. Brené Brown has this TED Talk about criticism and who to take criticism from. And that is such an important topic, because you don't want to be criticized by people that are playing it safe and are just judging people for the sake of judging people. You want to get critique from people that putting themselves out there. She phrases it as somebody who's in the same arena with you. You don't want to be judged by the audience that's just watching you and doesn't actually know what it takes. Get yourself people that you look up to and you feel inspired by, and from these people you can take the critique. Whenever I feel judged by anybody, or I feel like this failure of being seen, I like to remind myself of this phrase: talking bad about a person or judging them does not make their light shine any brighter. And it is so true, because if I talk bad about a person, I'm putting them down, but that doesn't elevate me. It doesn't bring me anything. Sometimes we have that false sense of security or this gossiping around, like, oh, look what they're doing, but it doesn't serve them. So if you catch somebody else judging you for something you might want to try, it doesn't make their light shine any brighter, and they're actually putting themselves down because they're in such a negative space. What gets mentioned a lot with self-doubt is stepping out of your comfort zone. Let's shine light on that word, comfort zone. I saw a reel the other day, and unfortunately I don't know who the original creator is, but she said something really groundbreaking, and my brain was like, oh my god, it makes so much sense. She said, don't think of a comfort zone as something comfy that you're feeling cozy in. It's just a familiar zone. You're familiar with the patterns around you. That's why it makes you feel safe. In this familiar zone, we also experience the fear of being seen, the fear of failure, growing to our full potential. All of these things that we have within us that are just holding us back. We're holding ourselves back. And that's why it's so important to step out of that comfort/familiar zone. Okay. Let's actually start talking about the steps that you can take in order to overcome the self-doubt. Okay, tip number 1. And if you've been around here for a while, you probably can't hear it anymore. Positive affirmations. And why am I such a big fan of positive affirmations? Because they've helped me immensely. Positive affirmations are working for you if, and only if, you have an emotional connection to them and you're repeating them often. The emotional connection part is essential, because you want to listen or repeat affirmations that feel important to you. If you're just blindly reading affirmations that don't really resonate with you, that don't spark some kind of intention where you're like, yeah, that's actually what I'm wanting to work on, then they're most likely not going to work. I would encourage you to actually write your own affirmations. You can Google, you can go on YouTube. I'm gonna link my playlist below if you want to check that out later and see if it resonates with you. If it doesn't, no hard feelings. Write your own, because that's the most important part, and you really want to make sure you have that emotional connection towards it. The second part of it is the repetition part, and that one is important as well because our brain needs about 3 to 4 weeks for a new habit to form. And the reason why positive affirmations work so well is because there is something called neuroplasticity. And without going like super detail why this word is so complicated to say, it actually just means that our brain has the ability to rewire itself. That means if you're currently struggling with limiting self-beliefs, it doesn't have to stay that way all the time or until you die. We are able to change, and our brain is able to change, and that's something so amazing. So over time, with the repetition and the emotional connection, the brain can actually make new neural pathways and kind of get rid of the negative self-talk and rewire it with something positive. And that's why I find affirmations so helpful. What also can help is mirror work. You can use your affirmations in front of the mirror. Stand up and read them out loud or listen to them on your headphones, but look yourself in the eye. And that might feel very weird in the beginning. Give it the 3 to 4 weeks and see if you feel different, if you feel like your body posture has changed, because it definitely did that for me. Tip number 2, small steps towards big wins. Sometimes the self-doubt and the thought spirals are getting so big and out of our control because we're thinking about that very far away goal that we want to do, or all the things, all the obstacles that are in the way, and we're not breaking it down. So my suggestion is take a journal, write your end goal at the bottom, and then try to break it in as small steps as possible, and then maybe do 1 step a day or once a week or something like that. It is really helpful to do that in small little chunks because it doesn't get so overwhelming. I would also encourage you to have a notepad or a journal with you and write down your successes. I always say a success is a success is a success. It doesn't need to be huge, it doesn't need to be big. Small little wins accumulate to big wins over time. In my journal morning routine, I always write down at the end of my journal entry the daily success, and I reflect on the success of the day before, and I'll just write down whatever comes to my mind. And sometimes, you feel like you've not achieved anything, but if it was a particular hard day, maybe just getting out of bed and into the shower was the win of the day, and then you write that down. And if you feel like you're having a especially hard time and you're like, oh no, I'm just not good enough, I can't do anything right, go look back at that journal entry or your note app and just go through all your wins, and I promise you that it will definitely boost your confidence and makes you believe in yourself a little bit more. I would like to give you an example out of my life, because sometimes I feel like we can feel we're the only ones struggling with something seemingly unimportant or seemingly so easy for other people. For me, it's driving, and I had my driver's license ever since I was 17 years old, and I was driving back in Germany when I was living there and had no problems, was always good. And then I moved to the US and I didn't have a car in the beginning, so I didn't drive for a really long time. And then also these highways here, everything's bigger and there's just so much more cars and traffic, and it just freaked me out to the point where I was doubting my ability to drive. And I believed that for a very long time. And the small steps for me, I took into place. Every time I went down to the car, I said my affirmations. I took a deep breath. Breathing is incredibly helpful too, just to recenter the nervous system. Like, okay, we're doing fine. Then I just started driving around our apartment complex. And I say this because I know driving for so many is not a big deal, not a big problem. I had to start pretty much from zero again. And that's okay, right? That's how we overcome self-doubt. And I would do 5-minute laps. I would do 10-minute laps. And then when I felt comfortable with that, I would venture out a little bit more to other side streets that I knew that weren't too far and I felt comfortable driving. And that's what I did for a while. And now I'm still nervous, but it's not as bad anymore. And I think that's the whole beautiful point of this, that it's possible to overcome your self-doubt, because the anxiety, the self-doubt is much bigger before I do the actual task. When I do it, I feel okay. Actually, when I'm driving, I don't think about my anxiety. I'm just like, okay, we're driving, that's what we're doing. But the whole anticipation of the process is what almost makes you want to not do it and stop even before you tried it. So if that was at all helpful, if you can relate to that, leave me a comment below. Tip number 3, and that's a big one. Don't believe everything you think. Don't believe everything you think. We have so many thoughts every single day, and they're not all true. Possibly a lot of them are not. And just because you're thinking you're not good enough, or you're not capable of doing this, you don't have the potential, and blah, 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 what your brain is telling you, it's just not true. Going back to my driving example, my thoughts were, I haven't driven in a while, I can't do it anymore. That's what I've been telling myself, and I believed it for a while. But when you do small steps, you write it down, you are able. You are able. Your brain is protective. Our brains want to keep us safe. Be better off, you'll be safer. Other people won't judge you, or whatever comes to mind, if you don't do it. And then we stay in that familiar comfort zone, right? You can actually question your thoughts. Question them. Are they really true? You can just brain dump. Write all the thoughts down that come to mind. All your fears or your worries, all your anxieties. And then read it back to you. And maybe it makes you laugh a little bit. Maybe it makes you frown. Maybe you're like, oh my God, is this really what I'm thinking about myself? You have a really stubborn thought and a really stubborn anxiety or form of self-doubt. Write that sentence down and find 4 things of evidence against it. And that could be anything from, I've done it before, I can do it again. Go to your success journal where you can write, you can actually see it black on white, what you've achieved before, and use that as evidence. As mentioned in this video, it's the easiest part to break down a big goal is into smaller chunks and tiny little habits, and staying consistent on those. And I know being consistent and staying consistent can be a little tricky. I have this video that you should watch next where I break down the tips that actually help. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!